And it's live.
It's live, it's back, and this time it's badder than ever. And yes, well, first of all, welcome to the Impact Narrative, our very, very occasional rummage through the glories of current events, and my colleague Simon and myself. I'm taking over this. It's
Please,
like I'm in the chair.
You are in a chair, Mark.
And we haven't. I am indeed chaired. We haven't narrated for a considerable time, and Simon, I think you really ought to apologise, frankly, for this, because I've been here waiting, and our invaluable producer Roz has also been badgering us to narrate. And you have generally been all over the world, causing mischief,
podcasting, and doing all of those types of things.
That implies that you've made other things more of a priority than this.
Oh, well, it's sort of running at the same time.
All right, it's all been complementary to the main effort, which is the...
Indeed, yeah.
And so we've had quite a few things happen in the year or whatever since we last did this. And so, Simon,
yes,
the Middle East. This is usually your area of interest, and perhaps things have been happening there recently, although there's been an awful lot happening since we were last together.
Yeah.
Maybe you would like to talk about things that are ongoing rather than, and obviously there's a Yemen thing too.
Well, Mark, we're going to talk about the Middle East. We're going to talk about stuff other than Yemen.
Right, well, and without minimising the significance of ongoing things there, and of course Syria, which has slipped even further down.
Which
the
is
news agenda.
still struggling away to try and
Brings-
build to some type of lasting peace, to try and mitigate against the ongoing devastation, the ongoing conflict, the displacement, and yeah, it's like you say, largely been ignored, forgotten, bypassed by other events in the region.
Yeah.
Yemen war.
Which
ongoing,
itself, of course, has really not been publicised anything like as much as it ought to be in terms
exactly,
of news
yeah.
values.
I mean, that humanitarian crisis that we were talking about a couple of months ago is still there. It's still happening. People are still starving. There's aid that has got in a little bit. The fragile peace between the Houthis and the government forces and the Saudis, it's kind of holding a little bit, but there's still lots of other sort of rather worrying events happening, and it's all very perilous and precarious. So yeah, it's
So we shouldn't, we're not minimising the importance of these things. However, I think you want to talk a bit about events in the Gulf and perhaps Iranian relations with the United States.
And Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom and Europe, and it seems like so much has happened, Mark. It seems like
seems like really quite a long time since we did this programme.
Well, it does, but I've been talking about this a great deal for the SEPAD podcasts, our sister podcasts.
Oh, that's where you've been.
But things they're going so fast. So many events are happening. There's so much misinformation, so much fake news. That it's really difficult to keep on top of it all. And I think maybe it's worth just going back and thinking about how all of this started.
Okay.
So where did it all start, Mark? I'm asking you.
What, in 1979 or in 1953?
Well,
Or 1953 was it?
it depends on who you ask.
Mossadegh?
The coup against Mossadegh, orchestrated by the CIA and MI6, and some may say there, others may say 79, others may say it's with the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the nuclear deal. Others would say it was Trump's decision to withdraw from it.
Yes, okay. Well, for the sake of brevity, maybe we'll go for the last of those on the list.
Might be wise. So Trump decided to withdraw from the deal. He said that it's the worst deal in the history of deals. It was a bad deal. It doesn't do the US any favours. And there's a lot of debate about what that actually meant, whether it was trade, whether it was about fears about regional security, whether it was fear about Iranian nefarious intent to support groups across the region that the US has designated as terrorist organisations. So there's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of concern. But the decision to withdraw created conditions of uncertainty. It created precarious conditions that meant that the region was sort of balanced on a bit of a knife edge. Trump put more sanctions on Iran. The Iranian economy was devastated. The Iranian economy has been struggling for a while. And of course, sanctions hit the economy hard. That's what they're designed to do. They have a massive impact on people. and the Iranian state decided that it wasn't going to take it. So, and here we reach a couple of important points, that the Iranian regime turned to Europe. Now, if you remember, about 2 months ago, the Iranians said to Europe, we will start selling our additional uranium beyond the terms of the deal in about 60 days, if you recall. And people were a bit concerned about what that was all about, and I think what it was, looking back on recent developments, was that was a call to arms. It was a call to Europe to say, look, you need to do something to save this deal that you worked so hard to do. Like, let's not forget that Britain, France, Germany, other European powers worked so very hard to get a diplomatic deal with Iran and with the United States, two long-standing allies. And so they were really concerned when the Iranians pulled out. They were caught in essence between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
What do you do in this kind of case?
Well, you call on the special relationship, and immediately you say to the American president, we, your special friends, think you may have been a little bit hasty here, whereupon the Americans always say, God, you're right, but you've got wisdom, years of experience, so we must always follow your... That happened, didn't it?
No.
Really?
Revisionist history.
I'm astounded.
Yeah, exactly.
You mean Jeremy Hunt couldn't
Well
just snap his fingers and immediately Mr. Trump meekly falls it? I mean, because Jeremy Hunt is, above anything else, a successful entrepreneur, whereas Mr. Trump...
Careful.
Maybe isn't.
Maybe.
Maybe isn't. So you should have listened to Jezza, our Jezza. Anyway, go on.
Perhaps, and
Back to
it was a real
things.
cause for concern, I think, and what that did is this inability to speak to the Americans, or indeed to really help out the Iranians. There were some efforts to help bring money into the economy, to inject the Iranian economy. It pushed the Iranians to this next point, which was last week's decision to say we are going to be above the threshold as set out by the nuclear deal.
And the other decision, which is to attack shipping...
Well, allegedly. And this is where it gets really quite delicate, because the Americans have said that it was Iran that was guilty, right? They've released...
So's Jeremy Hunt.
Well, that's true.
I believe him.
Well,
anyway, go on.
We'll get on to Jezza in a little bit, I
Yeah,
guess. But,
please.
but whilst the Americans and the Brits have said, yeah, Iran was guilty for this, there's a lot of states who are rejecting that and saying that we need more evidence. And there has been a real dearth of evidence provided, because whilst John Bolton released video footage that purported to show the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, putting...
retrieving, wasn't it? They were getting
yes, retrieving
faulty bombs back.
This was allegedly, if you believe Iranian sources, from a decade ago.
Right.
So there's a great deal of subterfuge, and reports over the weekend came out that said that it was actually and the yawns begin, it was a false flag operation. Allegedly brought about by the Saudis with an Iranian dissident group. So it depends on who you believe here, it depends on how you view it all. But what it means is that there's an incredibly unstable, precarious position, with the Iranians feeling encircled, the Saudis feeling incredibly vulnerable, the Emiratis feeling vulnerable, the Americans unsure of what they actually want, how they're going to behave, because Trump, let's not forget, has said he doesn't want to commit any more troops to the Middle East, but then committed 1,000 more troops to the Middle East. Trump has said he doesn't want a war, but has said we will do whatever it takes to... So there's a great deal of instability, and of course that was then exacerbated by the shooting down of a drone that was allegedly in Iranian sovereign waters, but not...
Well, sovereign air, probably it was in the waters after it had been shot down.
Yeah. But then the Americans said that it wasn't, it was in international waters, or international air, if you will. So there's, again, contestation, subterfuge.
It's got to be contestation.
And then the worrying thing was that Trump allegedly, according to the Washington Post, launched a strike on Iran. And then decided that he didn't want to launch the strike. Yeah,
but they launched a cyber attack.
And then allegedly launched a cyber attack. But the Iranians are saying, of course, that it didn't do anything. Now they're trying to demonstrate a position of strength in all of this uncertainty. So it's very very delicate, very finely balanced. And the danger in all of this, of course, is not just that the two sides can escalate into a sort of a spiral towards war, the classic realist security dilemma, and then the spiraling to war that is inevitable if you believe some of the more
hawkish,
or indeed the more negative
fatalistic,
realists. A fatalistic realist.
Yeah.
But it's not just that; it's the accidental issues that are built into this as well. The idea that you will either misperceive something, or you'll perceive it in a way that is incredibly detrimental to regional security, or something will happen that is outside of the parameters of sort of safety and back channels and things like that. So it's an incredibly delicate situation.
Yeah, and luckily you've got one of the more sort of even-tempered politicians of the last 100 years in charge of America. So at least we can be sure that that everything will be done to minimise the possibility of misunderstandings.
Of course, yeah. Well, at least that's something to hold on to, I guess.
Yeah, some beacon of hope in a really quite otherwise gloomy situation. Yeah. So. I mean, this is all grist to your mill, and the Saudi thing, you're saying the Saudis are feeling vulnerable?
Yeah, they're feeling vulnerable because they've got some issues on their southern border with the Yemen conflict. Iran is a much larger state in terms of demographics, and they've long had security concerns and fears about Iranian expansionism, either through traditional security means or through sort of non-state actors like Hezbollah. So there's a lot that's in flux at present. There's a lot that's up for grabs.
I would have thought the Saudis would be absolutely delighted, wouldn't you, about all this? Because if the Iranian economy's been weakened, that's good news. Things have happened which are not necessarily all that good for the reputation of the regime in Saudi Arabia. All those things will be forgotten because the Americans will be thinking but we're engaged in a war of more than just words with Iran, who's our most useful ally in this kind of situation. Well, apart from Israel, it's Saudi Arabia, and in this, obviously, Israel will be watching the situation very closely as well.
Well, it certainly will, but let's not forget that Benjamin Netanyahu is in a rather precarious position himself.
Yeah, but this is the kind of thing that with one leap he was free, isn't it? I mean, nothing better than international instability.
I was more talking about the fact that he's got to go through an election again.
Yeah.
And his wife has just been...
allegedly. Involved in a shouting match which was overheard by neighbours.
Oh, we're dancing on very thin ice right now, so...
Well, so, I mean, that's all fascinating, Simon, and gloomy. In fact, gloomy. Well, we try to present it in a way which perhaps simplifies issues and might then occasionally make things a little bit worse than they are. So sleep well tonight.
So as always, you can like us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on SoundCloud, on Spotify, on Acast, on Apple Music. Is there anything I've missed out?
No, just to say, you can like us. There are probably ways of showing alternative responses, but just ignore those.
Sure. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.